here almost weekly, you know that we've defended Andrew Tate when it was necessary. Like when hoes lied about him and there were text messages exchanges about how they were going to set him up because they wanted to become famous and they knew that people hated him and stuff like that. My controversial take this week was, and it honestly came to me while I was like exercising and I was like, I'm just going to like stir the pot a little bit. And I said, you know, Andrew Tate, who sold women for sex, and I didn't mean that as a trafficker. I meant that as like, you're a pimp. Like you were managing these hoes online and you had a cam business, right? Like that's what you do. He becomes a male role model. He is, by society standards, he's pretty much forgiven, and people love everything that he does and everything that he says. And Kim Kardashian, on the other hand, and let me just say this, I'm no Kardashian fan, but I'm also not a hater. Kim Kardashian had her sex tape come out over 15 years ago, I think, back in 2007. And she has not been able to, now that she's a billionaire, that she's in the billionaire status, that she has created a name for herself and then
an empire
for her and her family, she's not redeemable. Somehow her wealth now, her brand, which is valued at $4 billion, Skims went from $3.2 billion to $4 billion in less than 5 years. She is still, everything that she does and all the money has been attributed to that one sex tape. And of course, my DMs blew the hell up, from men saying that I was a liberal and a feminist and that I was lying about Andrew Tate, to them saying that how could I compare it to the Kardashians, that the difference is that at least Andrew Tate is saying good stuff for men, and Kim Kardashian was still using her body and all this stuff. And I said, but that's not the point. You understand? My point is, and I said this to the young women, you need to understand that we do live in a double standard society. I'm not bitching about it. I'm not crying about it. I've always known this, which is why I've never done stuff that you could find me doing, you can use against me in my later years, because women will be completely judged completely different than men. A man like Andrew Tate can engage in an immoral business model, which is getting women to sell themselves online to creepy men behind the screen that are going to jerk off. Okay. And he can be redeemable. We're not talking about his legal issues. That's a separate situation. Whereas Kim Kardashian's one sex tape, we are still talking about it as the main reason that she created $1 billion empire. That drives me nuts.
There was this gentleman writes, if not for the sex tape which her mother promoted, Kim K would be unknown. That's actually untrue.
Not true at all.
I was actually talking to Linda today about the timeline of this. Kim Kardashian was already getting recognition because during the early 2000s, there was a lot of attention to the culture of young party girls and the paparazzi, the Paris Hiltons, the Lindsay Lohans, the Britney Spears, so on and so forth. Kim Kardashian was a regular in those circles. And because Kim had a very distinct look that didn't look like the rest of the girls, she had already been getting attention. Right. In fact, it's why the sex tape blows up. It wasn't a Ray J sex tape. Nobody cared about Ray J. It was Ray J and Kim Kardashian. Now, was she uber famous? No, she was not. But the sex tape did gain recognition because her name and her Kardashian brand was already tied to it. In fact, immediately, you can even say that her celebrity status was immediately tied to her father and the O.J. Simpson case when the sex tape came out. So now it no longer became about just Ray J sex tape. It became about this girl whose father was an attorney. So this argument that she was completely unknown.
I just researched it. She started working with Paris Hilton in 2003. She
Correct.
became an assistant to Paris Hilton back in 1998. And then she started when she started hanging out with Paris Hilton, 2003, the sex tape didn't come out until 2007. By 2003, later, we already knew who Kim Kardashian was.
There are pictures that I remember from the early 2000s that when it was Kim's birthday, she was wearing wearing a red dress. Her and Paris were on a couch. They were partying. Those pictures went viral everywhere. It was a big deal. So here's the thing, and
somebody said, you don't need to feel sorry for her, my love. I don't feel sorry for a woman that flies private when my fucking ass still needs to go through TSA and get on coach and try to get a window seat because I can't afford to fly private. I don't feel bad for this woman at all. I am talking about the double standards between men and women. That is all I'm saying.
This idea that her mom, here's the thing. That sex tape was released by Ray J, which is disgusting that a man would take an intimate moment and threaten to release that.
Well, he's saying that because of Candace Owens. All of this theory comes from Candace Owens because Candace Owens and Ray J decided to get together last year to say that it was the mom and her that strategized to leak the tape. Now I ask you something. How does that prove the success that she has now? Let's say that she did, for the sake of this example. Let's say that they all met together and said, you know what's going to make you famous? We're going to do a sex tape and then we're going to leak it. And that's how you're going to become famous, which, by the way, it's very hard to do because he's nowhere near her status. And if you want to compare it to somebody else, then why isn't Pamela Anderson at her status? Why isn't Pamela Anderson a billionaire? Why did Pamela Anderson just fade off after Baywatch and after whatever it was? She's not relevant at all. The most you've heard of Pamela Anderson in the last 10 years is that she's friends with Julian Assange.
What's this girl from Teen Mom, Farrah Abraham? Like, it shouldn't see exactly my point. It's like Farrah Abraham already had some level of recognition because she was on MTV's Teen Mom, and she took out a sex tape and nobody cares about. She's a has-been. She's a nobody. Like, she had more clout than Kim did before the sex tape. So this idea that it's just a sex tape, it's not. Kim created a brand. They gave her a show. Her family is hilarious. You guys, it doesn't guarantee you success. But then it goes back to the fact where there's no redemption.
Yeah,
Kim can go to law school, become an attorney, help people get out of jail. She can create $1 million brand, create a brand for her family, change everybody's life, change fashion in general, change the outcome of
the beauty industry.
The beauty industry.
The reason why we do contour is because of Kim Kardashian. Because the first time that you ever saw contouring and then you ever saw the under the eye
outside of drag shows was Mario.
Mario introduced contouring and what is it called? Highlighting to the mainstream through Kim Kardashian.
The sex tape, it goes back to, the sex tape blew her up. No,
but it's not just it's not just about her. There was another screenshot that we didn't include, or maybe we did, of a girl. She's nobody. She's just a content creator on TikTok, really cute girl. And she's basically cooking in her kitchen. And she says, 5 years ago, I was a feminist. I believed in abortion. I believed in this and da-da-da. And she was an OnlyFans and, whatever. And now I'm like, I don't believe in any of that. Like, I'm not against abortion and I'm not a feminist and I'm not this. And you know what the response was from people on Twitter? Oh, the funnel from OnlyFans whores to trad wives is, and they start with the whole thing. So I'm like, so do you guys want girls to stay doing sex work, or do you want girls to stop that behavior and correct themselves? Like, how do we redeem? How do we redeem?
If you've slept with over 4 men, delete yourself, and then that's the only way that men are. That's the only chance that you have in life is what these men want.
Lana Rhodes. Lana Rhodes. I'm talking about the porn star. The porn star. Lana Rhodes. Do you guys know who that is? She was a famous porn star. Lana, right? So basically her and Mia Khalifa, you guys do know who Mia Khalifa is, right? Porn star. Both of them have been going to different podcasts and on TikTok and everywhere and saying, don't do sex work. It's bad. I did porn. It was really bad. I'm traumatized, X, Y, and Z. The same thing with Lana Rhodes. Lana Rhodes has a child from a basketball player. He doesn't want to take responsibility for the child because he's embarrassed that he got a porn star pregnant, right? So I think she signed an NDA. But now I just heard her the other day on TikTok, and she was like, yes, I am ashamed of what I did. I have a child now. I want young girls to know that this is not the way, that you should not do porn because I'm embarrassed. Now my child gets to see that. You know what the response from people are, men and women? How dare they bring Lana Rhodes and Mia Khalifa to talk and about no, they're not even speaking trad. They're not at all. They're just saying, be careful and don't do pornography. Don't do sex work. It's going to haunt you later in life. But apparently they're not redeemable and they're not good enough to be able to spread this message.
Maverick made a very good point of something that's actually seen. I agree with you. So Maverick says, in order for the woman to redeem herself, she must prove she's no longer a practitioner of that former lifestyle. However, that's not what the red pill community agrees on, which is very different than what you as a Christian would believe in. In fact, the manosphere does believe that women who seek out Christ and go to church are only doing so to manipulate men into believing, into deleting their history as their dating history, or that they were whores, or whatever it is that they want to call them. They don't even believe in the authenticity of coming to Christ. They don't believe in that testimony of finding Christ and saying, I am ashamed. I feel shame. Like all sinners, when we find Christ, what we should feel is shame. No sin is above the rest. They don't believe in that process of being born again through Christ. They think that it's all a manipulation of women.
Making mistakes. We are now we now have a society where you're not allowed to make mistakes and redeem yourself. And forget Kim Kardashian. I'm talking about you and I and regular people. We don't need to worry about a woman who can travel in her $100 million plane when the rest of us have to fucking sit through TSA for 5 hours. You can redeem people. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, you can redeem yourself, or you can't even admit you made a mistake. It just happened to me here on YouTube. Last week, I shared a personal testimony. It's actually why I'm so afraid to talk about my personal life, period, right? I shared a testimony when I was 21 years old, probably even younger than that. I don't know. It could have been when I was 21. And I was dating my boyfriend back then. And we were going to a pool party. And I put on a bikini that I thought was fine. I have a very large bottom. It's just the way that I was made. So I bought what I thought was a large bottom as well. My boyfriend at the time said, you should change. I think it's too small. It's going between your cheeks. And I said, okay, fine. And I changed immediately. It wasn't a problem. I share that to say that because I respected my man, I wouldn't have an issue changing from what he thought was too small. Do you know what the response was from men? From one guy? Oh, but you were, right? Because you wanted attention. Why did you wear it in the first place? Because you wanted attention. You're not allowed to make mistakes, period. That's the point. You're not allowed to make mistakes and say, hey, this is a story of where I respected this guy and I actually changed. No, you're not allowed to do that because apparently you want attention. I didn't say anything
Which
else.
Again goes back into like the man leading you and telling you, hey, I don't like that, and the woman following through. But there's no women, there's no winning. And maybe that's a topic for the next show. But I genuinely, I do worry that, very similar to how feminists tend to start turning into lesbians, that the manosphere is going to start turning men gay. Yeah. Because there's already conversations being had by God, Myron Almighty himself, where he's, making commentary about how gay men are more successful, tend to be more statistically successful than straight men because they don't have to deal with women. Myron has also advocated for married men to live with their buddies so that they can lift more often than living with their wives. So one has to wonder at how far is this women bashing going to go as a way of deflecting from the own work that men have to do on themselves and on the society that does depend on them to lead? At what point is this going to switch out to like, let's just hang out with one another and forget women altogether, and we can have test tube babies because birthing isn't even that important?
I saw it in Pearlie's channel. I saw somebody make the argument that women actually were not needed because very recently there was a baby created from two mice, from mice, a mouse baby created from mice and from 2 male mice and synthetic whatever. And I was like, okay, so pretty much we're just going to be like dumped or something into another planet. Like, I'm just going to go with Elon Musk to Mars. I'm sorry.
I'm sure. Listen, all I'm saying is that when I start hearing these conversations coming from men, I gotta wonder, because, you know, you don't want to be the person that takes a low blow and be like, oh, you probably hate women because you're probably gay, dude. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're just being a feminist. Don't say that. But it's like, bro, like, you guys really hate women and resent them for being women. And that's the part we've talked about. They resent the role that the double standard gives women. They resent that role. They want to compete with women. Like, oh, I want to be in a yacht without having to work with it. I want to get attention without having to work. I want to have women sim for me without, and it's like, maybe a conversation for another day. But guys, please.